Every single thing you buy has two price tags. One of them you can see. It shows up on the screen when you tap your card, and it's gone from your memory by the time the week ends. The other price tag is invisible. It never prints on any receipt. It's the amount that same money would have become if, instead of spending it, you'd given it somewhere to grow. And the invisible price tag is always bigger than the visible one. So sometimes only a little, sometimes by a factor of 10, 20, even 50, depending on how many years were left for it to compound. The gap between those two numbers isn't the cost of enjoying your life. It's the cost of never being shown that the second number existed at all. Almost everyone goes their whole financial life without seeing it, not because they're careless, but because nobody ever pointed at it. This is the story of someone who finally saw it. You're 22. Rent gets paid on time. The job covers what it needs to cover, and $10 a day quietly leaves your life without ever asking to be remembered. A customized coffee order that costs $3 more than the plain version. A convenience fee tacked onto a parking app. A subscription add-on you agreed to during a free trial and never canceled. $10 gone in 2 or 3 transactions too small to bother tracking, and yet together, they're the single financial decision that will shape the next 3 decades of your life more than almost anything else you do. Not because you're irresponsible, because nobody has ever shown you the second price tag. One night, scrolling through something unrelated, a number stops you cold. $10 a day invested in a plain index fund tracking the broad market at its long-term historical average of around 10% a year becomes over $1.5 million in 40 years. You do the math again, convinced you fat-fingered a decimal. You didn't. That's what compounding actually looks like, and compounding doesn't behave the way your gut expects because your gut is built for straight lines, and compounding is a curve that gets steeper every year you leave it alone. The next morning, you open a brokerage account, not because you suddenly feel ready, but because you finally understand that not starting is also a decision, and that decision has its own invisible price tag, one that quietly compounds in the background of every year you wait. You pick a broad, low-cost index fund. You set an automatic transfer of $10 a day, time to leave your account before the day has a chance to invent a reason to spend it instead. This is the single most important structural choice you'll ever make about money. Not the size of it, the automation of it. Nobody builds real wealth through willpower alone. They build it by taking the decision out of their own hands and letting a system make it for them every day, whether they're motivated that morning or not. Day one, the balance reads $10. It looks exactly like doing nothing. That's the first quiet test, and it's the one that ends most people's financial future before it ever starts, because the beginning of $1 million outcome and the beginning of nothing look absolutely identical from the outside, or you're 1 year in. The balance is $3,814. You put in $3,650 yourself. The market added $164 without asking you to do anything at all. It's a small number, and you know it. What it represents isn't small. A mechanism now runs quietly in your name every single day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. You're 3 years in. The account holds $12,626. You've deposited $10,950. This is the phase that ends most people's investing before it really begins. Not because they run out of money, but because they run out of belief. 3 years of consistent contributions feels from the inside like training for a game nobody told you was actually being played. The growth is real. It's compounding on itself right now, but the number is still too small to trigger any emotional reward. And your brain wants a signal the account isn't sending yet. This is exactly where people redirect the $10 towards something that pays off immediately. A same-day delivery order, an upgrade that arrives tomorrow and feels like a reward for months of discipline. Every one of those swaps feels perfectly reasonable in the moment. Together, They're one of the most expensive decisions a person can make, not because of the $10, but because of the 30 remaining years of compounding that leave the building along with it. You leave it alone, you're 5 years in. The balance is $23,287. You put in $18,250. The market generated just over $5,000 on top of that without one additional decision from you. You run the invisible price tag calculation for the first time on purpose, not as a thought exercise, but as an actual habit. Every one of those $10 days over 5 years, the coffee upgrade, the convenience fee, the forgotten subscription, carried a hidden price of roughly the same $5,000, spread thin across 1,800 ordinary mornings. Once you actually run that number, you can't stop running it. Not with anxiety, with clarity. $10 is never just $10. It's $10 plus whatever $10 becomes when it's given time in the right place to grow. You're 10 years in. The balance is $60,792, contributed $36,500. The market has added nearly $24,000 on its own. The account has quietly stopped feeling like a jar you toss coins into. It starts feeling like a second income that hasn't formally introduced itself yet. Then the market drops 22% in a few brutal weeks the spring you turn 32. Your balance falls from $68,000 to somewhere near $53,000. Every headline is built to make sitting still feel like negligence. You check the account more than you should. Every instinct says move it somewhere safer, wait for things to calm down, come back once certainty returns. Certainty never returns. That's not a flaw in the market. That's simply how it's always worked. You do nothing. 7 months later, the account sits above where it was before the drop. That single stretch teaches you something you never forget. Markets don't reward the person who reacts fastest. They reward the person who reacts the least. You're 15 years in. The balance is $121,193. You've deposited $54,750. For the first time, the market share of your own account is larger than what you actually contributed. You've quietly become a minority shareholder in your own future. Here's the number almost nobody shows you plainly. The $10 you didn't invest at 22 doesn't cost you $10. It costs you what $10 becomes over the decades you had left to let it compound. Every one of those small, forgettable purchases carried an invisible price tag worth many times its sticker price, one that showed up on no receipt and appeared on no bank statement. That coffee upgrade was never the problem. The invisible price tag riding along on top of it was, you're at a family barbecue that summer sitting next to your younger cousin. She's 23, working a job she's still figuring out, spending the way almost everyone does at 23. A daily coffee run, the occasional ride share instead of walking 20 minutes, never tracking any of it because nobody has ever shown her the second price tag either. At some point between the food and the second round of drinks, she asks why you seem unbothered by the things that stress everyone else out that age. You don't really know how to answer without sounding like you're lecturing her, so instead you just show her the account balance on your phone. She stares at it for a long moment, not the way people look at something impressive, but the way people look at something that doesn't fit the shape of what they thought was possible. Then she asks the obvious question, how? You tell her. $10 a day automated for 15 years. She looks at the number again, then at you, and admits she probably spends close to that most days without thinking twice. You tell her that's exactly the point, that $10 was never really $10. It was the invisible price tag that never showed up anywhere until right now. She goes quiet, clearly running the math in her head the same way you did at 22 and didn't believe the first time. That night, she opens an account of her own and sends you a screenshot with 3 words. This looks like nothing. You send back to, you're 20 years in. The balance is $218,471. You've contributed $73,000. The market has built $145,000 on top of that, nearly double what you personally put in, generated without a single active decision beyond the one you made 2 decades ago. 20 years of quiet proof does something advice on its own never manages. It changes how you actually behave, not through motivation, but through evidence. You stop needing to be convinced to keep investing. The account has become its own argument, and it renews that argument every single day. You're 25 years in, the balance is $375,136. It now generates roughly $37,500 in an average year at that same historical rate, more than the median income in a fair number of places. And now, without 1 hour of labor, without one active decision beyond the one you made at 22, you never needed a complicated strategy, a managed portfolio, or an app promising something smarter than a plain index fund. You needed one low-cost fund, one automatic transfer, and the patience to leave it alone long enough for the compounding to become undeniable. That's the entire method. Anyone selling you more complexity than that is usually selling it to themselves, not to you. You're 30 years in. The balance is $627,448. You've deposited $109,500 total. The market built $517,948 on top of it. For every dollar you personally contributed, the market handed back roughly $4.70. The account now produces close to $63,000 a year without requiring anything from you at all. Enough to cover a full year of most people's expenses without ever touching the principal underneath it. This was never really retirement math. It's the math of options. Choosing work because you want it, not because your bills demand it. Having a floor under your life that doesn't disappear the moment a paycheck does. $10 a day built that floor. Not through one dramatic decision, but through roughly 11,000 small automated ones made before any single day got the chance to spend them first. The account doesn't know your name. It doesn't care what you earn, where you started, or whether you felt ready the morning you opened it. It tracks exactly one variable, how long it's been allowed to keep running. And it rewards that one variable with a consistency nothing else in personal finance can match over 3 decades. Somewhere right now, someone who just turned 22 is holding a $10 bill, tired, a little hungry, and to them it looks like exactly $10 and nothing else. They can't see the second price tag yet. They don't know the money in their hand isn't really a $10 decision. They need to know it's a 30-year decision wearing a $10 disguise, the first deposit into a mechanism that, if it started tonight and kept running untouched, would eventually produce more than most people earn across an entire decade of working without a single extra hour from them. It won't feel like that tonight. Tonight, it will just feel like $10. That's exactly how it's supposed to feel. The mechanism was never built to require belief up front. It only ever required a start. The belief arrives later, quietly around year 5, when a few thousand unearned dollars show up on their own. Again at year 10, when the balance crosses 60,000. Again at year 20, when the market has contributed more to the account than its owner ever did without asking permission first. Both price tags were always there on every single purchase. The whole time. Only one of them was ever visible.